Max Verstappen has been in another class this season in Formula 1. While the competition behind him has been exciting, the lack of challenge from his teammate Sergio Perez has made both championship titles into a bit of a procession. While this might be great for Max and Red Bull, the fans and F1 owners Liberty Media have been less than impressed. Luckily for all of us, there are plans to change that, but not in the way you might think. Today we're going to talk about the Red Bull dream team that seems to be developing behind the scenes, and why it's actually great for the sport, so don't go anywhere. Let's start off by considering what the perfect Formula 1 season would look like. In an ideal world, every single team would win a race. You would go into a weekend thinking that anything could happen, that if the track suited the car or the driver was really on it, any one of the 20 cars could cross the line first. In reality, that's never happened and never will happen in Formula 1. Driver skill is too big a variable, as is the gap in funding and technical skills. Since Liberty Media has been in charge of Formula 1, moving towards that situation has always been the goal. The NFL is the most lucrative sports league in North America and on planet Earth, and American football's tagline is what Liberty Media wants to emulate with F1. Our goal is to build a long-term healthy ecosystem and build a sport that has as much of some of the elements that the NFL has on any given Sunday, that anybody can win, Liberty Media CEO Greg Maffei said during an investors call in April. Anyone familiar with American football will know the Any Given Sunday mantra is more than just the title of an Oliver Stone movie, but a core element of the NFL's ethos and appeal. It's the idea that no matter how wide the gulf in ability between two opposing teams, fans can always head to a game knowing their team has a chance to take home a victory. Recreating Any Given Sunday in Formula 1 is probably impossible, but at the moment we are as far from it as we can be. Liberty Media wants that to change though, and the solution might actually come from the problem. Is Red Bull the best positioned team to reintroduce competition to Formula 1? I know it sounds ridiculous, but the path to making that happen is being walked behind the closed doors of the paddock as you watch this video. How many of you remember 2016? Hamilton versus Rosberg. That was an incredible season. Sure, Mercedes dominated, but their rivals battled each other all season, and they battled hard. The spectacle was unbelievable, and that is what Red Bull wants to recreate. Formula 1's silly season had a premature start with Daniel Ricciardo replacing Nick de Vries earlier this week. The coverage of that move has followed the line that Daniel is at AlphaTauri till the end of the season, and if he does well enough, he'll replace Sergio Perez for next year. But Daniel isn't the only option Red Bull are exploring. They want to create a real dream team with the best drivers Formula 1 has to offer. It has been suggested by some media sources that Liberty Media are encouraging Red Bull to sign a driver to compete with Max Verstappen for the sake of the spectacle of Formula 1. The drivers of interest are Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. Now, I know what you're thinking. Red Bull would never do anything to upset Max, or why would any driver want to drive alongside Max, knowing Red Bull might not favour them? I'll answer the point about Red Bull not wanting to upset Max first, then I'll talk about Lando and Charles, and why they could be driving for Red Bull very soon. You're right to think that Red Bull wouldn't want to upset Max too much. After all, he is currently the best driver on the grid, and he's winning them everything at the moment. But the rest of the grid is closing the gap. The longer these regulations stay in place, the closer the chasing pack will get, and as that happens, Red Bull are going to need another driver that can reliably score big points, which Checo is proving he can't do. Max isn't the kind of guy that's going to be scared by a little competition, that's for sure. Winning the Constructors' Championship is worth a lot of money to Red Bull, and having a second driver who can at least get close to Max would be a huge help with that. Bringing in Lando or Charles wouldn't upset Max, it would just motivate him even more. Since Red Bull's founder Dietrich Mateschitz passed away, how Red Bull operates behind the scenes has also changed. The dynamics have changed compared to Dietrich's era, with diverse visions and strategies for the future. One of the goals is to secure a second top-tier driver within the team. If the new Red Bull CEO Oliver Mintzlaff wants two top drivers, it will happen, whether Max wants it to or not. But would Lando and Charles want to be in that position? And why are we naming those two in particular? Well, because we know that Red Bull have already approached both drivers, that's why. Let's start with Lando. A meeting between Norris's manager Mark Berryman and Red Bull's motorsport advisor Helmut Marko was spotted at the Red Bull motorhome by the Daily Telegraph at Silverstone over the weekend. and has fueled the talk that the Brit is being headhunted. The pair met a couple of hours before Sunday's British Grand Prix. He has a contract with McLaren until 2025, but among the young drivers, he is by far the strongest, Marco said of the Brit. His youthful nature would also suit Red Bull the best. Marco also confirmed intensive discussions have taken place previously, and that the respective parties still maintain contact. Charles Leclerc has also been approached by Red Bull recently. Talks with Leclerc occurred in late May to explore the potential of a separation from Ferrari. Fred Vasseur has also been prioritising securing Charles Leclerc's contract renewal for the past few weeks, leaving Carlos Sainz in a state of uncertainty. Leclerc's contract isn't up until the end of next season, but while Ferrari's attempts to get him to sign a new one are coming surprisingly early, it isn't unheard of. A more compelling argument for Leclerc moving to Red Bull would be that he just isn't happy at Ferrari anymore. The race at Silverstone was another incredibly disappointing weekend for Ferrari in what has been an incredibly disappointing year and a half. At the start of 2022, they had the fastest car on the grid. All they had to do was match Red Bull's development and limit the mistakes they made, and Charles would have been driver's champion. What actually happened was the Ferrari pit wall turned up drunk for every race. The engine started to spontaneously combust, and nothing they updated on the car made a meaningful impact on performance. While the pit wall appears to have sobered up a bit this season, the car is not improving from race to race. They've been passed by Red Bull, Mercedes, Aston Martin and now McLaren in car performance terms in the last year and a half. That is shockingly bad. Since Ferrari last won a championship, Red Bull have had 2 eras of success. Charles is getting fed up with Ferrari's poor performance. He's been very vocal about it in the press, and he would be completely right to be looking for a move elsewhere. So far, all this sounds very exciting. Lando or Charles alongside Max could see Red Bull recreate the all-Mercedes title battle of 2016, something I know we'd all love to see. But if that does happen, there are going to be some losers. Sergio Perez is the obvious one, whose days at Red Bull are widely accepted to be numbers. But what about Daniel Ricciardo? Just days before Daniel rejoined AlphaTauri, the team that gave him a start in Formula 1, he said in an interview that he would only join the team if it created a pathway to Red Bull, because that is where he wanted to end his career. Clearly, Red Bull have given him some kind of assurance behind the scenes that if he performs well for the rest of the season, he could be in line for a seat alongside Max in the near future. Given the choice though, Red Bull will want Lando or Charles over Daniel. They're younger, with more of a career ahead of them, and arguably better drivers. Daniel may have just made his way back to the grid, but any fans that think he'll be back at Red Bull by the end of the year shouldn't get their hopes up yet. The one saving grace may be the state of the contracts with the other parties involved. Sergio Perez is contracted with Red Bull until the end of next season. Leclerc is tied to Ferrari for the same amount of time, and Lando Norris is with McLaren until the end of 2025. Contracts are not unbreakable, but they are expensive to break. Red Bull might be happy to axe Checo at the end of this year, but unwilling to take on the cost of severing Norris or Leclerc's contract. In that situation, Daniel would drive a Red Bull next season before presumably retiring and being replaced by someone else. There are a lot of ifs and buts about the situation at the moment, but things are happening behind the doors of the Red Bull motorhome. Now, we just have to wait to find out exactly what. Would you like to see another season like 2016, with 2 drivers from the same team going at it for the driver's title? And who do you think will take over Sergio Perez's seat when the time comes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.